The grand mansion of the Han family stretched across the hillside like a kingdom of stone and glass. From afar, it looked perfect. Wide marble stairs, tall pillars, glittering windows that reflected the morning sun. But inside, behind those heavy doors, perfection was only a mask. At the far end of the dining table, Ji-hoon sat quietly, his hands folded on his lap. The golden chandelier above poured light on his pale face, but no one seemed to notice him. His elder brother, Soo-min, laughed loudly as their father praised him for yet another expensive car purchase. Their mother forced a smile, trying to keep the family meal peaceful. Ji-hoon said nothing. He was used to being invisible. "Father, it's a limited edition," Soo-min bragged, holding his phone out to show pictures. "Only 3 exist in all of Asia." Chairman Han leaned forward, pride gleaming in his eyes. "That's my son. That's what it means to live like a Han. Power, wealth, status." His words cut through Ji-hoon like a knife. He shifted slightly, the limp in his leg making it hard to sit comfortably. He wanted to speak, to say something, anything that would make his father look at him with even a fraction of that pride. But the silence stretched too heavy. Finally, his father's gaze swept across the table and landed on him. Cold, sharp. "And you, Ji-hoon, what have you done today?" The young man lowered his eyes. He wanted to say he had been reading about software, learning codes in secret from online books. But he knew the answer didn't matter. "Nothing," Chairman Han concluded for him, his voice laced with disgust. As always, a disappointment. The words stung, though Ji-hoon had heard them all his life. He bit down hard, fighting the urge to cry in front of them. Crying would only make his father's lips curl in more shame. Soo-min smirked, leaning back in his chair like a king who had just watched his rival humiliated. "Father's right. You should just stay out of the way. You'll never understand how the world works." Their mother shifted uncomfortably. "Enough," she whispered, her eyes flicking to Ji-hoon. But her soft protest was like a feather thrown against a storm. No one cared. The meal ended quickly. Soo-min left to meet his friends. Chairman Han left for a business meeting, his expensive cologne lingering in the air. Madame Un excused herself quietly. Ji-hoon remained seated long after they were gone. Alone at the massive table, he looked at the untouched food on his plate. His throat ached with unshed tears. "Why was I born this way?" he thought bitterly. "Why couldn't I be the son he wanted?" The house around him felt colder than winter. Though it was filled with maids, guards, and workers, no one spoke to him beyond necessity. To them, he was the shadow of the family, the broken branch of the tree. Hours later, he limped out to the garden, seeking silence. The air was fresher there, though even the roses and trimmed hedges seemed to belong more to his brother than to him. He lowered himself onto a bench, staring at his thin hands. His father's words echoed endlessly in his mind. A disappointment, a failure. That was when he heard it, the sound of soft humming. A woman's voice, gentle but strong, carrying across the garden like a song meant to heal broken things. Ji-hoon lifted his head. At the far corner of the yard, someone new was working. She bent gracefully as she trimmed a rosebush, her dark skin glowing in the late afternoon light. Her figure was tall and elegant, her movements confident. She was nothing like the silent, cold maids of the household. Her name, he would soon learn, was Okinyo. But for now, he only stared, curiosity burning quietly inside him. She was humming as though the world was not cruel, as though life was still something worth singing about. For the first time in years, Ji-hoon's heart stirred. He didn't know why. He only knew that the emptiness inside him suddenly felt a little less heavy. The next morning, Ji-hoon woke to the sound of laughter echoing through the mansion halls. His brother's friends had come over, filling the house with noise and arrogance. Their voices bounced against the walls like reminders that he didn't belong. He stayed in his room most of the morning, staring at the ceiling. His laptop sat on the desk by the window, screen glowing faintly. He had been secretly teaching himself programming for months, but his father would never call that achievement. To Chairman Han, it wasn't about passion or brilliance. It was about showing off, about being loud, about proving dominance. Ji-hoon sighed heavily and shut the laptop. Why do I bother? By midday, The noise in the mansion became unbearable. He needed fresh air, even if it meant facing the stares of the house staff who often treated him like glass. He limped down the long corridor, one hand lightly brushing the wall for balance, and stepped out into the garden. There she was again, Okinyo. Her back was to him as she watered a line of flowers. The sunlight spilled over her skin, making her look like she carried her own glow. Her hair was tied back simply, but strands escaped and danced in the breeze. She wore the plain gardener's uniform, but it couldn't hide the quiet strength in her posture. And again, she was humming. Ji-hoon froze. No one in this house sang. No one dared disturb the silence of wealth. Yet here was this woman, daring to bring music into a place where everything was cold marble and sharper words. He thought of leaving, retreating before she noticed him. But something held him still. Okinyo straightened, finally sensing she was not alone. She turned, and their eyes met for the first time. Her eyes were warm, curious, not filled with pity, not filled with judgment, just human. "You like the roses?" she asked gently, her voice carrying a musical rhythm he wasn't used to. Ji-hoon blinked, startled. I don't know." His voice cracked slightly from disuse. He hardly spoke to anyone these days. She tilted her head, studying him as though he wasn't invisible. "They bloom stronger when someone cares for them," she said. "Flowers know when they're ignored." The words, though simple, struck something deep inside him. He looked away quickly, his throat tightening. Okinyo returned to her work, but she continued speaking, as though inviting him into her little world. "I'm Okinyo, new here." She gave a small smile. "And you must be Ji-hoon, right?" He stiffened. No maid had ever dared call his name like that, so directly, without shame or hesitation. Usually, they avoided him, bowing quickly before rushing away. "Yes," he murmured, almost uncertain. Her smile grew, soft but steady. "Nice to finally meet you." Ji-hoon's heart stumbled in his chest. It was such a normal sentence, but no one had ever said it to him before. Not like that, as though meeting him was something worth being glad about. For a long moment, neither spoke. The air was filled only with the gentle splash of water from her watering can. Ji-hoon sat on the bench, watching her work. He didn't know why, but the silence with her didn't feel heavy like it did with his family. Finally, Okinyo glanced at him again. "Do you like reading?" His eyes flickered up. "Yes." Her eyebrows rose with interest. "What kind?" Ji-hoon hesitated. No one had ever asked. No one cared. "Technology," he admitted softly. "Computers, software, business ideas." Okinyo stopped watering for a second, her lips curving into something between surprise and admiration. "Ah, so you have a sharp mind." The words warmed him in a way compliments never had. He searched her face, expecting sarcasm, but found only honesty. "You know," she continued, lowering her watering can, "I studied technology before coming here." Ji-hoon's head snapped toward her. "You what?" She chuckled lightly at his reaction. "Yes, not much, but enough to love it. Circumstances brought me here, but knowledge doesn't disappear." Her gaze softened. "Maybe I could share some of it with you." The idea stunned him. No one had ever offered to teach him anything. His father had told him countless times he wasn't capable. His brother mocked the very thought of him learning. And now here was a gardener, a woman the household probably thought was beneath them, offering him what his own family had denied him. His throat tightened. He didn't know what to say. Okinyo seemed to sense his hesitation. "Only if you want. I just thought, maybe it would be nice to have someone to talk to. Someone who doesn't laugh at dreams." Dreams. The word cracked open something inside Ji-hoon, something he had buried under years of silence. He looked down at his trembling hands. For the first time in his life, he wanted to believe. "Teach me," he whispered, almost afraid the moment would vanish. Okinyo's smile spread wide and bright, as though the sun itself had leaned closer. "Then we begin tomorrow." The breeze swept through the garden, rustling the leaves like applause. Ji-hoon sat frozen, his heart racing in a way he hadn't felt before. For years, he had lived in shadows, unwanted, unseen. And now, a woman with eyes full of warmth had reached into the darkness and lit a spark. He didn't know it yet, but that spark would grow into a fire powerful enough to shake the very foundation of his family's empire. The following morning, Ji-hoon woke with a strange energy humming in his chest. It had been years since he had looked forward to anything, but now, he could not stop thinking about Okinyo's words. "Then we begin tomorrow." The mansion was loud as usual. His brother's laughter echoed through the hallways. Servants rushed about preparing for another of Chairman Han's business gatherings, and Madame Un sat silently at breakfast, nodding politely as Sumin boasted of his conquests from the night before. Ji-hoon ate quietly, eyes on his plate. "So, little brother," Sumin sneered across the table. "What did you do yesterday? Count the cracks in the ceiling again." Laughter rippled among the staff standing by. Even his father smirked. Ji-hoon's spoon trembled slightly in his hand. He said nothing. He had learned silence was his only shield. But deep inside, he was no longer as broken as they thought. He carried a secret now. A secret that was waiting for him in the garden. As soon as the meal ended, he slipped away. Okinyo was already there, kneeling by a bed of lilies. She looked up as he approached, her smile as bright as the morning sun. "You came," she said, as though she had never doubted. Ji-hoon nodded, his chest tightening with nervous anticipation. What will we start with?" Okinyo rose to her feet, brushing soil from her hands. "Knowledge grows like a tree, roots first, then branches. So we begin with roots." She led him to a shaded corner of the garden, where she had set up something surprising. An old, slightly cracked laptop. "Found this in storage," she explained. "No one here cares about it, but it works well enough." Ji-hoon stared at it with wide eyes. He had never been allowed to touch anything outside his small personal laptop, which he hid like a guilty secret. To see this here, waiting for him, felt like a miracle. "Sit," Okinyo encouraged. He lowered himself onto the bench, hesitant at first, then touched the keyboard. His fingers trembled. "What should I do?" Okinyo leaned closer, her voice calm and steady. "First, you learn that this machine is not your enemy. It is your partner. Everything you imagine can be built if you know how to speak its language. Today, I will show you that language." For hours, she guided him. Patiently, she explained the basics of coding, showing him how lines of symbols could command the computer. She spoke of logic, structure, and creativity. And with each word, Ji-hoon's heart lit brighter. He caught on quickly. His mind, hungry and sharp from years of silence, devoured every concept she placed before him. Where others might struggle, he soared, his limp forgotten, his shame replaced by focus. "You learn fast," Okinyo observed, impressed. Ji-hoon flushed faintly. No one has ever said that to me." "Then they were blind," she replied simply. "I see you, and I see what you can become." The words lodged deep in his chest. He turned his face slightly, hiding the sting of sudden tears. For so long, he had lived in a world where he was nothing but a disappointment. Now, in the quiet of the garden, one woman's belief was enough to shake the foundations of that lie. Their lessons became daily rituals. Each afternoon, while the family busied themselves with meetings and parties, Ji-hoon and Okinyo met in the garden's far corner. She taught him not just coding, but also business principles, global tech trends, and even leadership. Sometimes, she told him stories of her own life in Kenya, how she had dreamed of building her own company but had been forced to leave after betrayal and hardship. "Life will test you," she said one evening as the sun dipped low. "But pain sharpens the blade. You can let it break you or you can rise stronger." Ji-hoon listened, every word sinking into him like rain into dry soil. Slowly, he began to change. He walked with his head a little higher. He started writing plans, sketching ideas, building models. On the old laptop, he still faced mockery at the dinner table, but where once he would have shrunk away, now he silently carried the fire of knowledge within him. One evening, Sumin found him in the corridor, scribbling notes in a small book. "What's that?" his brother demanded, snatching it away. Ji-hoon froze. Sumin flipped through the pages, scoffing at the diagrams and codes. "What is this nonsense? You think you can be an inventor? A cripple like you?" He laughed cruelly, then tore a page out and crumpled it before throwing it on the floor. Ji-hoon's heart burned. For the first time, anger flared instead of shame. He picked up the torn page silently, his jaw tightening. He didn't answer, didn't argue. He simply clutched the book to his chest and limped away. Behind him, Sumin sneered. Pathetic. But Ji-hoon's silence now was no longer defeat. It was the silence of a storm gathering strength. That night, as he sat in his room rewriting the damaged page, Okinyo's words echoed in his mind. I see you, and I see what you can become. For the first time in his life, Ji-hoon allowed himself to believe it. The forgotten heir was no longer content to remain forgotten. The Han mansion was a world of polished stone floors, glittering chandeliers, and rigid silence. To outsiders, it looked like a palace where every wish could be granted with a snap of the fingers. But for Ji-hoon, it was a prison made of cold walls and harsher words. The only warmth he had discovered since childhood came not from his family, but from a place most of them never visited, the garden. It was here that Okinyo worked. Every morning, Ji-hoon wheeled himself across the stone pathway to watch her quietly from under the cherry blossom tree. She had a rhythm when she worked, moving gracefully as though every leaf, every flower, every stubborn root mattered. The sun caught the bronze of her skin, and the beads of sweat on her forehead shone like tiny stars. Sometimes she hummed songs in a language Ji-hoon didn't know, but her voice was like honey, smoothing the ache in his chest. Okinyo noticed him, of course. At first, she only gave him polite nods, the kind a servant gave a master. But Ji-hoon was different. He didn't bark orders, didn't act as if she were invisible. Instead, he looked at her like she was important. One day, as she trimmed the rose bushes, Ji-hoon spoke, his voice uncertain. You sing beautifully. She paused, turning her head, surprised he had even addressed her. Most members of the Han family ignored her presence unless they needed something. You understand the song? She asked, a faint smile tugging her lips. No, Ji-hoon admitted. But I understand how it feels. Sad, yet hopeful. For a moment, silence lingered between them, only broken by the sound of the clippers in her hand. Then she chuckled softly. You have a good heart, Ji-hoon. You listen beyond words. That is rare in this house. Her words warmed him more than any praise his father had ever given. That evening, Ji-hoon returned to the garden. He carried a small notebook on his lap, filled with messy sketches of machines, circuits, and codes. He found Okinyo resting after a long day, sipping water under the tree. For the first time, he dared to share his secret. Can I show you something? He asked, almost trembling. She raised a brow but nodded. Ji-hoon opened the notebook, flipping to the page of a rough design for a program he dreamed of building. A smart system that could connect businesses across the country faster than any traditional method. I've worked on this for years, Ji-hoon confessed, lowering his gaze. But my father says I'm useless. He doesn't believe I can create anything. Okinyo leaned closer, her eyes scanning the pages. She expected scribbles of a hobbyist, but what she saw was raw brilliance. His diagrams were rough, but the ideas were powerful, advanced, even. Ji-hoon, she whispered, her voice heavy with awe. Do you know what you have here? His hands shook. A foolish dream, maybe? No, Okinyo said firmly. She looked into his eyes, unblinking. This is not foolish. This is genius. You only need guidance. Someone who believes in you. Something shifted inside Ji-hoon. For the first time in his life, someone wasn't laughing at his dream. Someone saw him, truly saw him. His chest tightened with emotion. From that day, the garden became their classroom. Every night, when the mansion fell silent, Okinyo sneaked into Ji-hoon's study. By day, she wore gloves and dug her hands into soil. By night, she revealed the mind she had kept hidden. Unknown to the Hans, Okinyo had studied computer engineering in Kenya before life circumstances forced her into domestic work abroad. She wasn't just a gardener. She was a builder of possibilities. Think of coding like planting seeds, she explained, her voice calm and patient. The soil is the system. The seed is your idea. With care, it grows into something powerful. Ji-hoon listened like a thirsty man at a well. His once weak hands flew across the keyboard as Okinyo guided him. Each night they built, tested, failed, and tried again. Slowly, the young heir who had been mocked as useless began to transform. His eyes glowed with passion, his back straightened with pride, and his heart no longer beat with despair. But beyond the lessons, something else grew, an unspoken bond. When Jihoon laughed for the first time in years, Okinyo found herself staring at him longer than she should. When she brushed too close, their hands almost touched, and both hearts raced. They never spoke of it, but the silence between them was charged with something dangerous yet sweet. But sweetness does not survive unnoticed in a house built on envy. One night, as Jihoon and Okinyo pored over codes, a shadow stood at the study door. Sumin. His lips curled into a sneer as he watched his crippled brother tapping away at a laptop with a servant by his side. Fury boiled in his chest. How dare Jihoon smile? How dare he build a world where Sumin was not the center? He clenched his fists and whispered to himself, "Father must never know, but I will destroy this before it begins." And just like that, darkness began to stir around them. The Han family mansion was never silent during a business gathering. Laughter from guests echoed in the grand hall, glasses clinked, and polished shoes clicked against the marble floor. Tonight was no different. Chairman Han had invited influential investors, ministers, and business tycoons from Seoul. It was supposed to be a night to showcase Sumin as the future leader of the Han Empire, but fate had other plans. Jihoon sat quietly at the far end of the table, ignored as usual. His wheelchair was tucked against the wall, almost hidden by the golden drapes. He wasn't even supposed to attend. His father had made that clear. But Madam Moon had begged him to let Jihoon sit in, and to keep the peace, Chairman Han had reluctantly allowed it. Sumin, in his expensive tailored suit, was in his element. He boasted about trips abroad, bragged about women he had entertained, and exaggerated deals he never closed. The guests laughed politely, though some exchanged wary glances. Jihoon listened silently, his fists tightening on his lap. He could see the cracks, the lies Sumin fed so easily. These men weren't fools. They knew arrogance when they saw it. And still, his father beamed with pride, clapping his elder son on the shoulder, as though he were a king already crowned. At the peak of the dinner, an investor asked a question that made Sumin's smile falter. "Mr. Han, we hear the Han Group is planning a digital expansion. What's your vision for it?" Silence spread like a stain. Sumin blinked rapidly, fumbling. Yes, of course, expansion. We will hire the best foreigners to design websites and, digital things." His words were clumsy, shallow, embarrassing. A few guests coughed into their napkins to hide laughter. Chairman Han's face stiffened. And then, unexpectedly, a quiet voice rose from the far end. "There is a better way." All eyes turned. Jihoon. He trembled inside but forced his voice steady. "The company doesn't need to waste billions. Outsourcing. We can build our own system. Faster, smarter, safer. A platform to connect suppliers, investors, and clients instantly. It will cut costs, increase efficiency, and place Han Group ahead of every competitor." The room froze. One of the investors leaned forward. "And what would such a system look like, young man?" With shaking hands, Jihoon pulled out a small laptop he had hidden under his seat. Okinyo's words echoed in his mind. "Be bold, Jihoon. Let them see who you are." He opened the program they had been perfecting in secret for months. Within minutes, he demonstrated a prototype platform. Sleek, functional, intelligent. Numbers crunched instantly, supply chains reorganized in real time, costs calculated with precision. It wasn't just an idea. It was alive. Gasps filled the room. One investor whispered, This is revolutionary." Another leaned back, nodding slowly. "Chairman Han, you never mentioned your younger son had such vision." Chairman Han's face turned pale, then flushed with fury. He hadn't expected Jihoon to humiliate Sumin so publicly. But before he could speak, the investors erupted with praise. "This is what Korea needs. He's brilliant. Mr. Han, you must let this young man lead the digital division." Jihoon's chest tightened with something he had never felt before. Pride. For the first time, people weren't laughing at him. They were clapping. They were seeing him, From across the hall, Madame Un's eyes glistened with tears she quickly wiped away. Okinyo, standing quietly near the servant's entrance, pressed a hand to her chest. She wanted to run to him, to tell him how proud she was, but she kept her place, her smile soft and secret. But not everyone was pleased. Sumin's jaw clenched so tightly his teeth ached. His wine glass shattered in his hand, crimson liquid dripping down like blood. He stared at Ji-hoon with unmasked hatred. He dares to steal everything from me. Chairman Han slammed his fist against the table, silencing the room. Enough! His voice shook with rage. Do not be deceived by this cripple's fantasy. He has always been weak, always a disappointment. These are illusions, nothing more. An investor spoke sharply. With respect, Chairman, your son has presented something that can change the future. You should nurture such talent, not bury it. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. For once, Chairman Han had no control. His empire was built on reputation, and tonight, his guests had seen brilliance he could not deny. Ji-hoon lowered his gaze, but inside, fire burned. His father's words still cut deep, but Okinyo's voice inside him was louder. They saw you, Ji-hoon. You are not invisible anymore. As the guests left with excitement, Sumin cornered Ji-hoon in the corridor, his eyes blazing. He leaned close, hissing, I don't know what tricks you're playing, but you'll regret this. Father will never let you take what is mine. Ji-hoon met his brother's glare, and for the first time he didn't look away. His voice was quiet but firm. I don't need what is yours, Sumin. I will build my own. The words stung more than a slap. Sumin stormed away, his mind already racing with dark plans. If Ji-hoon would not remain the forgotten heir, then he would be silenced, by any means necessary. The mansion was eerily silent after the investors left. The echoes of clinking glasses and polite laughter had faded, replaced by the heavy tension of unspoken war. Ji-hoon sat alone in his study, his laptop open but untouched. His chest still burned with the memory of applause. For once, the world had seen him, had honored him. But in the reflection of the glass window, he also saw the storm gathering. His father's glare, Sumin's clenched jaw, hatred so thick it nearly suffocated him. He knew they wouldn't forgive this. The whisper of betrayal. Down the corridor, Sumin paced furiously, his shirt loosened, his eyes wild with rage. Chairman Han stood by the bar, pouring himself whiskey with shaking hands. That boy humiliated us, Sumin spat, slamming his fist against the wall. He made me look like a fool. Me, in front of men who have always respected me. Chairman Han's face was stone, but his voice dripped venom. He has always been a thorn. I should have cut him off long ago. Sumin's lip curled. Then let's do it now, before he steals everything. The two men locked eyes, and though Chairman Han hesitated, pride and anger drowned out the faint whisper of fatherhood in his chest. Do it, he muttered coldly, but make it look like an accident. Okinyo had a strange feeling as she moved through the garden that night. The cherry blossoms were falling, their petals scattering like pale tears on the ground. But the air was too still, too heavy. When she slipped into Ji-hoon's study to check on him, she found him staring out the window. His shoulders were tense, his hands trembling over the keys. You should rest, she said softly. It's been a long day. He turned to her, and his eyes shone with unshed tears. Okinyo, for the first time they saw me, but my father, my brother, I don't think they'll ever accept me. She knelt beside him, taking his hand firmly. Listen to me, Ji-hoon. You don't need their acceptance. You are enough. You've built something no one can take away. Do you hear me? No one. Her words wrapped around him like armor, and for a brief moment he allowed himself to believe. But outside the door, two shadows crept closer. The sound came suddenly, the creak of the door, the flicker of movement. Ji-hoon turned just as two masked men rushed in, their blades glinting under the dim light. Okinyo gasped, but before fear could freeze her, fire lit in her veins. She grabbed the heavy lamp from Ji-hoon's desk and swung it with all her strength. It crashed against the head of the first attacker, sending him sprawling. Ji-hoon, move! she shouted. But Ji-hoon's wheelchair jammed against the rug, trapping him. The second man lunged, knife raised high. Okinyo threw herself in front of Ji-hoon, the blade grazing her arm as she shoved the attacker back. Pain seared through her, but she didn't falter. Ji-hoon, desperate, slammed his laptop against the man's face, breaking the screen but buying seconds of survival. The fight was chaotic, brutal. Okinyo, bleeding but unyielding, grabbed Ji-hoon's metal crutch from the corner and swung it like a weapon, her eyes blazing. For the first time, Ji-hoon didn't see himself as the weak one. He saw Okinyo, fierce, unstoppable, risking everything to protect him. The attackers, stunned by the resistance, fled through the window into the night. The room was wrecked. Blood stained the blossoms that had blown in through the open window. Okinyo collapsed to her knees, her hand pressed against her wound. Ji-hoon wheeled himself frantically closer, his voice breaking. Okinyo, no, stay with me. She forced a weak smile, her breath trembling. I told you, no one will take this away from you. Not while I'm here. Tears streamed down Ji-hoon's face as he held her hand. For years he had been invisible, unwanted, unloved. But here she was, bleeding for him, proving he was worth everything. At that moment, a truth crystallized in his heart. Okinyo, he whispered, his voice shaking. You're the reason I'm alive. I can face the world because of you. Her eyes softened, and even through pain, she whispered back, and I'll never leave your side. But elsewhere in the mansion, Sumin reported the failed attempt. Chairman Han's fury was volcanic. You incompetent fool, he barked, striking his son across the face. Sumin stammered. They fought back. He had help. Help, Chairman Han hissed. From a servant? His eyes narrowed, deadly. Then she must be removed first. The boy is nothing without her. And just like that, a new target was marked. Later that night, Ji-hoon sat with Okinyo under the cherry blossom tree, her arm bandaged clumsily by his trembling hands. The petals fell around them like snow, covering the bloodstains on the grass. Okinyo, he said softly, his voice raw. I don't care if they hate me. I don't care if they disown me. I only care about what we build together. Our company, our dream, our life. She looked at him, her eyes shimmering in the moonlight. Are you saying? Yes, Ji-hoon whispered, his hand tightening around hers. Stay with me, not as my gardener, not as my mentor, but as my partner in everything. The night air held its breath. Okinyo's lips trembled into a smile. Even as tears slid down her cheeks. I will, she whispered. And beneath the blossoms, with danger still lurking, Ji-hoon made a silent vow. No matter what it cost, he would protect Okinyo. He would rise not just as an heir, but as a man worthy of her love. Because in her, he had found what his family could never give him, a reason to fight.
Hello besties, this is just the beginning of Jaehoon's journey, but will he rise, bring light, or will the darkness of his family destroy him first? Don't miss part 2, it will shock you. Thank you so much for watching. Kindly like, subscribe and share.